Hey guys, Will's Garage here. In this video, I'm going to be dropping the rear subframe on the E92 M3. We're going to be doing a whole lot of upgrades while I'm in there. And the main reason for that is because I'm going to be installing a new final drive from limitedslip.de, aka Florian. So this final drive has a 4.44 gear set. I know, it's extremely short, but I'll talk more about it later on. But yeah, so while I'm upgrading this, I'm going to be dropping the whole rear subframe, and once I have it out, I'm going to be installing solid subframe mounts as well as solid differential mounts. And also, since I'll have the drive shaft and everything disconnected, I'm going to be installing a titanium forward X pipe. Again, I'm going to provide all the details on this. And since the drive shaft's going to be out, I'm also going to be installing a carbon drive shaft, which I have tucked away in that box back there. So the problem is I don't have much time to work on this project. I've been meaning to do it over the Christmas break, but unfortunately some unexpected things came up. And then after that, I got extremely sick, so this whole project got delayed. But now that I can do it, I don't have that much time, so I'm just gonna try to do the work bit by bit. So I'm probably gonna break up the work into multiple videos. So if you guys are interested in seeing all these upgrades, make sure you subscribe and stay tuned. I will go into more details on the upgrades in the future videos.
Alright, let's get right into it. So first thing you got to do is drop the rear section of exhaust. This is pretty straightforward, so I'm not going to go into detail on it.
Make sure the e-brake is pulled up. Alright, so I'm removing the half shaft. This is, I believe, an E14. Alright, so you're gonna have to disconnect the level sensor. There's an electrical connection up here that you can remove, but I feel the plastic buttons are kind of brittle, so I don't want to mess with that. So instead, I'm gonna disconnect 2 bolts so that I could just remove the assembly from the subframe. Now that it's disconnected, we can separate it from the subframe to let it hang here. The other piece, again, was the ABS sensor, or the speed sensor, whatever you want to call it. Since I had the fender liner removed, I decided to disconnect here. You could probably get away without removing the fender liner if you remove the speed sensor right along here. I don't know if the camera's catching it, but right there. So on the passenger side, there's 2 connectors also behind the fender liner, but this time I didn't bother removing the entire fender liner. You just got to remove a few of the screws in the rear section. One of the connectors is for the brake wear sensor. One, again, is for the speed sensor. So just go ahead and disconnect those.
Next, we're going to disconnect the drive shaft from the differential, but there's a heat shield in the way that you'll have to remove. To do that, you'll need to remove a few 8mm and I believe also 10 and 13mm screws. You'll also need to remove the center bracket supporting the X pipe.
crap. bunch of rocks. Alright, so now that we got the heat shield out of the way, we have access to the drive shaft CV joint, which attaches to the differential. So we're going to go ahead and remove these bolts. I think these are E12 bolts. The CV flange is not going to separate easily, so you're going to have to pry it apart with a pry bar or screwdriver. There we go. This piece right here is kind of telescoping, so you can push it in. It's gonna hang in here for now until you drop the diff.
Alright, next up we're going to disconnect the e-brake cables. There's two ways to do this. You can either disconnect it from the wheel hub or disconnect it from underneath the center console. Since I already removed the majority of the center console in the past, I chose to do it this way. If you're interested in seeing how to remove the center console, check out the video I made on the upper right hand corner. So once you get the center console and the airbag module out of the way, you'll see the e-brake cables underneath. There's a black tab you can pull back and release the cable with a pick. This method didn't work out for me because I had the cables set really tight, so I ended up removing the e-brake by loosening 3 bolts that hold it down. The e-brakes came out really easily after doing this. Now you can go back underneath the car and pull the cables out and disconnect it from the subframe.
So it's up to you guys whether or not you want to disconnect the shock from the top or the bottom. In my case, I removed it from the bottom because I have remote reservoirs and I have the line running into the trunk, and I don't want to bother with disconnecting that.
Don't forget to disconnect your brake lines. The easiest way to do this is to disconnect the rear driver's side where it meets the subframe.
So now we're ready to lower the subframe. It's held in with 4 E18 Torx bolts. Alright, there's one more bolt to remove in the front subframe area. As you can see, this arm is bracing the subframe up, and you need to remove this. There's an E14 Torx bolt that you have to remove here. There we go. So behind this plastic trim here is another bolt. Broke the push pin. Does anybody know what is the point of this air deflector? Do I really need to reinstall this thing? Because after going through what I just did, I'm really inclined to leaving this piece out. If anybody knows, please leave a comment. All right, I think we are officially cleared on dropping this thing now. So got 2 more bolts in the back here.
So I braced the subframe up from the differential fins, which was a mistake because it's off-centered and the front end of the subframe is much heavier, but luckily I had another jack to even it out. So after dropping the subframe on a couple of dollies, I rolled it out of the way, and looking back at it, overall it's not hard at all to remove, it's just time consuming. So in the next video I'm going to be removing the differential and installing solid differential and subframe bushings, so stay tuned for more.